Welcome back to Solutionaries. Inviting everyone to settle in. I'm your host, Clements. Got a very special lady with us here today. I'm very grateful and honored for this episode to offer you all some gifts and tools of deep trust. This incredible woman has opened this space that we've fallen in love with, that we've been offering our trainings. And unfortunately, it's had to be closed for a while. But I want to honor you, Angelyn, for joining us. Angelyn is CEO of a leading edge creative development. She's the founder and owner of Xenia, which is a beautiful 38-acre retreat center in the heart of Bowen Island in BC, founded in 1994. We want to ask you to speak about that process of its birth. Love to share this quote from Marianne Williamson, who's endorsed your latest book, as I really appreciate this quote. Every mind is imbued with divine intelligence, but making conscious contact with it can be difficult. Although faced at times with extraordinary challenges, Angelyn Toth learning to listen to that intelligence and to radically trust it led her from danger to safety, from desperation to hope, and ultimately to the highest levels of peace and happiness for herself and others. Reading her story inspires us to listen to and radically trust this intelligence within ourselves. From Marianne Williamson. Welcome, Angelyn. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you, Robin. It's lovely to be here.
I first want to ask you to speak to us about your connection with nature. One of the things I loved about your book was that calling that you heard to connect deeper with nature. And I recall that first story that you shared of your first solo retreat to Bowen Island to do some writing, and you answering that call just to be in silence and to be in nature and to leave everything. And that was a time where we didn't even have cell phones. And can you share?
Mm-hmm. Well, it goes way back, my pull to nature. I grew up in a very kind of angry household. There was a lot of fighting going on between my sister and my dad mostly. And I would just kind of slip out and go out to the back in the day. And I would go out and I'd have my pretend horse and my jam sandwiches and I'd be gone. And, you know, in those days at 6, 7, 8 years old, I was gone all day. You know, nobody really cared. And that's where I found my solace. And that's where I felt a truth and I felt a safety. So in my household, it didn't feel safe with all the anger and the energy. And so very quickly, I made my way outdoors. And I had a passion for horses as well at age 6, that it kind of, this passion bit me at that age. So, and I found a way to be around horses throughout my life, which kept me outside in nature. So I would say that was kind of the beginning steps. And throughout my whole life, I've always needed to be around horses and have a dog and plants and be in nature. So throughout my adult life as well, when I started working in the corporate world, like on the 35th floor in downtown Vancouver, that's when I felt like my heart and soul were dying. And I worked there for 7 years, and every day it felt like a sentence. I always say it was my 7-year sentence that I was doing there. And again, it's different for everybody, but for me, I totally needed to have that nature. And I think it came about because I just felt safe there. I feel safe in that space of nature.
Thank you. And one of the titles of one of your books is Honoring Your Calling, a professional guide to quitting your job and doing your soul work. Can you share with us that really strong call to not just to be in nature, but to follow your heart's purpose, your soul's purpose?
It's not easy when you believe that your salary and the benefits and all of the things that you were trained to do are the way you have to do it. And like, for instance, I was at the Royal Bank for 7 years and a part of me was dying. And I found a mentor who actually started teaching me about public speaking. And I worked with him for about 3 years. And I knew I was on the right track. And he kind of lured me out of that job. And I started going part-time at the Royal Bank. And now in the day, you couldn't go part-time corporately. We don't do such a thing as part-time corporate. We're going back a long time. But I found a way to get my boss to consider giving me part-time. I did a whole 5-page, this is what you can do. This is how we can farm out that work and this work, and you'll even save some money. So they allowed me to go part-time. And then I started working with this gentleman for a couple of years. But that idea of, and then it was like, now let go, now let go, let go. You're going to do this other work. This is your soul work, your passion. Well, I still get a good paycheck. I still get the benefits. I still, what will people think? It's uncertain. The idea of even moving into more entrepreneurial thinking compared to that job, employee thinking. And so I went through that process a number of times of letting go and trusting and trusting. And that's part of my passion now, to help others. I see people. In fact, my partner was a denturist for 32 years. And he's such an artist and such incredibly gifted. But because he'd been in that profession, part of my writing that book, he was my, my avatar. He was the one I was writing the book for. And he said, when I first wrote the book and he started reading it, he said, it's too confrontive. The questions are too confrontive. I'm not ready to look at those questions yet. But over time, he did, gradually. He answered those questions of his soul, and he was able to let go. And he sold his business a couple of years earlier than he would have otherwise. So now he's in that process of doing his soul work, although it's a bit vulnerable and a bit scary. Whoops, did I freeze there?
Just for a moment you did.
Yeah.
I wanted to share that in my experience, coming into truth, coming into our truth, coming into truth itself, isn't so much about gaining or adding anything to our lives. It's more about unlearning and subtracting and letting go of, especially our ideas of what we believe that truth should look like in our lives. Can you explain some of that letting go process a little bit more for us?
And that is so true, Robin. It's not about adding anything, or, like I'll take him again as an example. It's not about going and doing more and more and more courses and get more qualifications and more education. You have everything inside, and it is about letting go more and more and more of who we think we're supposed to be, and being who we actually already innately, without any further ado, are. We are. And it's plowing through the conditioning. It's doing the breathing work. It's doing the work, isn't it? To start becoming aware of what we're saying to ourselves first all day long. Who's running the show? And as we make that transition from the ego-based life, the conditioned-based life, and we start to open and empty a bit and make space for awareness, we start to come home to who we really are. And trusting that, and trusting that every single day, that will be shown if we have to go and do another course, or we'll be shown, but it's not coming from proving myself. Am I good enough yet? It's an emptying process. Like in our silent retreats, I talk about that. It's an emptying. And what we loved as a child usually is an indicator.
For me, when I feel empty, I feel undivided. There's a knowing, there's a peace and a safety that's undivided. And when I'm undivided, when I'm empty but full at the same time, I'm able to respond to life instead of react to life with our programmed conditions.
Exactly.
Can you speak to one of the things I loved about your book was the challenge of your vision quest, with
Mm,
this native elder that put you out on the mountain overlooking the ocean all by yourself, but you were afraid of the dark.
mhm,
Can you share that process with us?
mhm. I was doing a course at the time, and we had been studying the Course in Miracles. And it was a 6 month program. And one of the requirements was to go to be alone for 4 days and 4 nights. And I had already done some sweat lodges and things like that. So I started to love the Native American culture. And I thought, wow, that's kind of a format for a vision quest, a real vision quest. And so I thought, well, I'll do that. And then the second thought was, but wait a minute, you have to be out at night alone in the dark. And for some reason, I had become very afraid of the dark. And yet, as a kid, I wasn't afraid, but I was terrified of the dark. So I remember distinctly, I had to make medicine ties in preparation for this vision quest. I had to do maybe about 100 of them. And in each one of them, every day, I needed to put a prayer. And I was only allowed to put good thoughts into it. So if I got frustrated or afraid, I had to stop, take a breath, take some time, and bring myself back. And then I could continue. And this was a very difficult process. It took a whole week. And I realized that that vision quest had started the moment I said yes. It didn't start up on the mountain. It already started. And I was in a tangle, a knot, fear. You're going to die. You're going to get murdered up there. A bear is going to take you out, or a murderer. There's going to be murderers up there, and all this noise. And okay, calm down. And I tried to pull it off a few times, call it off a few times, but something deeper inside of me just, it's okay. Just keep doing the medicine ties. And so I got up to I did the process ahead of time. And then I did get up to the mountain. And as he was leaving me that first night, that's when I went into sheer terror. Like, what? I don't think I can do it. I don't think I'm going to be able to be up here in the dark alone. And he looked at me, Pat Henderson, his name was. And he said, he looked at me, he says, yeah, she does look a bit afraid. So he says, well, I'll bring a man up and put a man up on the hill with you, and he can stay over the side. I'll come up this evening and I'll bring him with me. And I said, okay, all right. So I sat down, and there you are. No journaling, no book to read, nothing to do, a little diddly bit of water, zero food, 4 days and 4 nights. And he gave me a little bit of a tarp that I could use if needed. And we laid down the boundary with the medicine ties, and you sit within this space for 4 days and 4 nights. What could be easier? What could be easier? If you had a practice and a mind that you knew how to slow it down and go quiet. But that wasn't where I was at. The stage of life was, I was really in collusion with my inner chatter, my ego mind, my fears. I was them. And so it was incredibly scary, especially when he came up that night and he said, Spirit has told me, the grandfathers and grandmothers have told me that I don't need to leave a man on the hill tonight. Instead, I'm going to leave you my pipe. And I thought, what? A pipe? I didn't have the reverence for the pipe at the time, but, I knew it was special. So off he went. And yeah, that probably was one of the scariest nights of my life. And I did not sleep until there was a crack of daylight coming in. It started to crack open, and then I fell asleep. It was a 4-day experience, and I'll shortcut the whole thing, but by the end of it, I was at peace, surrendered, completely in love with all that is. Just, it was amazing. Very, very, there were lots of pieces that I've written about in the book about, like, the butterfly, and that was such a beautiful experience when the butterfly came over, sat on my shoulder. And I just knew I was so loved. And when you're loved, how can anything hurt you, or how can any harm happen? Because we are loved. We are all that loved. And we get confused. We forgot, or maybe we didn't ever know that through our childhood.
Mhm. For me, it reminds me of the mythic story of Buddha and just, sitting with himself at the root of all of his stuff, at the root of the tree, enough that the darkness could break into his body to bring the light out and for his awakening. And a lot of Eastern teachers will say, I don't have much to teach you, but I'm here to help you remove that which is already, which is covering up what's already there. So
Mm.
I love how you brought us back to that love that we are, but
Mhm.
we need to again peel away the layers that's been shrouding or covering that up. It's for me, it feels like the silence is one of the prayers that kept coming through in your call, and I've really been called to more and more silence over the years, and I realize how busy the Western mind is.
Mm.
And in my experience at Xenia, there is such silence and
Mhm.
such connection with nature. It feels like you're the only one on the planet. We've got no neighbors to disturb. You're on 38 acres, huge, tall, standing trees everywhere. I'd love for you to share with us a little bit more about the gift of silence and your connection to the corporate world and how profound it was for you to drop into more silence, to
Mhm.
be able to start to listen to this voice that you talk about so profoundly with the different stories in your life, and to be able to trust that voice.
Mhm. Very, very important. From the corporate world, I did a sabbatical in a tree house on Bowen Island, and that's how I got to Bowen Island. And the sabbatical was for a to write a corporate book for my public speaking programs. That was the idea. That was my idea. But what actually happened was a whole lot different. It was a beautiful tree house up in on these big tree stumps with glass. It was all glass, windows, roof, all glass, exposed to the trees. And it did have a bathroom, and it had a kitchen, little kitchenette. So it was it was a luxury tree house. And I got to be there for 2.5 months. And again, at first I was still afraid of the dark. So I didn't exactly go wandering around. Not, I wasn't, because yes, right, because the treehouse happened. I mean, the Vision Quest happened after. So yes, I was afraid of the dark here at the treehouse, but I would find myself. Do you remember the summer? No, you wouldn't even have been around even, but you wouldn't have been around. The summer of 1986. It was Expo year in Vancouver.
I do remember that. I was 11 years old, and my uncle was a very strong part of Expo 86.
Ah, okay.
He was
Well,
one of our
I was perched in a treehouse, and going around the lake, and everywhere I went, I didn't see a living soul for 2 months in terms of around on the trails or anything. And I think they were all at Expo, and it was a beautiful summer, just beautiful sunshine. And that's where again I deepened my relationship with nature and trusting nature. And I mean, I remember sitting in a river, a stream, for 4 hours, and it seemed like 15 minutes. I kind of sat right on a stone in the middle as the river went around me, and I just dropped. And the only reason I knew it was 4 hours, when I was going back through the cove and the bakery, and I saw the clock. I'm like, what? Where did 4 hours go? But that, of course, led to the inquiry of, where did I go? Where did I go?
Ah, ah.
When that space of sitting there and becoming one with the creek and the stone and the ferns. And it was a little deer that poked up its head that, brought me back out of where I was. And again, brought about more inquiry, more inquiry. And I started writing a book called Messages from a Treehouse. interestingly enough, it was when Neil Donald Walsh was putting out messages from God. And I thought, after the fact, I thought, oh, I could have written that book, because that's what happened to me at the treehouse. I
Mm.
started putting questions on my computer, and I would start getting answers from a deep, profound place. And at first I didn't trust it, like, what is this? But over time I did. It was like in those days I thought about myself and then my high self. So it was separate from me for the longest time, until finally everything moved in as that one. But it took a while. So I learned a lot about silence, a lot about dematerialization. Beam me up, Scotty. Now, I don't know, like, I'm not there yet that I can dematerialize. However, it started to break down a lot of my conditioning about what is real and what is actually not real, what is an illusion,
Uh-huh.
and how we perceive everything, and how it's not the way we perceive it to be, actually. So I highly recommend, if you've anybody that's listening, if you've never done a sabbatical or a silent retreat, or a time where you can be like 10 days, a week or longer in nature alone, it's just a profound relation, deepening of your own relationship with yourself. And the silence, when you get right deep into the silence, you discover that that's actually who you are.
Thank you. Many of us take vacations, but we get very busy on those vacations. And I lived in a vacation destination for many years in Mexico, and those people that really took the time to slow down experienced some transformation and
Mhm.
oftentimes some real breakthroughs and deep healing. I want to ask you a question that my wife has for you because she really loved your book. And Eden wanted to ask you, what is the biggest thing that you had to let go of in order to deeply trust in this voice?
Mhm. Well, it was control. It was my way compared to thy way. I had to I had to give up the sense of thinking I knew better. And it's definitely control, and getting to that place of surrender where you actually hand it over. Like, really, over to whom? Over to that knows. That part of me that knows the way. I don't have to worry. Like, I've written a chapter in my other book that you haven't read yet called It's All Handled. So trusting implicitly, not 99%, Robin. 99% is not enough. It's 100% or nothing.
Thank you.
It's 100%. So, and it's not something, somebody says, okay, I surrender. Oh, yeah, yeah. No, no, no. It's part of the divine mystery. That we can't will that. Surrender is something that arises at a certain time, and often through 2x4s or, a very difficult time. And where I learned radical trust, can I share that short little story? Because I think that's what Eden is asking. Where I got that solidified, where I understood 100%, I was asked at a very difficult time of my life I'll just keep it short, but to go left when I wanted to go right. Everything in me wanted to go left. My friends agreed, yes, go left. My peers, family, yes, go left. But something was leading me right.
Well, let's share the details of this because
Okay,
I know
all
what
right,
you're talking about. And
all right.
please
I
share the details of that.
Okay, the details are I had separated from my husband when our daughter was 1. And 2.5 years later, and I was in a relationship with a man who I thought was my soulmate. We were having fun. My daughter loved him, great relationship. We were in Breitenbush in the hot springs on a little holiday when I got this message the very first time, a message so clear. And it was, you have to go back with your husband. I'm like, ignore. I don't know where that came from. So I ignored it. The first few days of this retreat, I kept hearing, and it was a very gentle, gentle voice. You have to go back with your husband. And I'm like, you'll have to read the book to understand why that wasn't a good idea. But I kept saying, there's no way. I got home back to Vancouver and I got the message again. So I decided, okay, I guess I have to go back with my husband, even though logically and friends, some of my friends wouldn't speak to me again because they said, you're really sabotaging your life. You've got a lovely relationship. You're going to uproot your daughter again. And all I could say was, I have to. I was hearing this voice, this kind of knowing it was an instruction. It wasn't an idea. It was an instruction. So I decided, okay, I will go back. Now, my husband was open to the idea, really wanted to get back together. So we did go back together and uprooted my daughter. And I put my heart and soul into it with full integrity. Because if I was going to do it, I had to do it 100%. So I had to let go of my beloved boyfriend. And he thought I was crazy, but I had to follow this. And then what happened was about 3 months, it was a disaster. After the first couple of weeks, he'd had an affair already. It just was, it was a nightmare piecing together this very, very broken relationship. And I tried really hard, and we did clearings and, upstairs, sitting on chairs, doing this official clearing, and it would be okay for a few minutes, but really it was difficult. And then 3 months and 12 hours later, I remember it well, I get a message, you can let go now. Let go of what? The marriage. And so I was a bit mad, like, what did all this mean? And it was really clear, you can let go now. So I ended the marriage again. And I said, it's over, it's not gonna go. And again, my friends thought, we could have told you that. And I said, I know, you're right. I made a mistake. I didn't listen right. I've lost my mind, I didn't understand what that significance of that was until 1 year, just short of a year later, my husband died tragically. And it was a very immediate, it happened. It was a very scary time, but he died. And I'm like, what? It was one of the difficult things I've ever had to do is to tell my little girl that her daddy is dead. And that was a whole nother story. It was a devastating time for any mother. And I just couldn't really understand everything. So I was very confused and very depressed for quite a while. And for a couple of years, I was going through a lot of legal stuff to figure everything out. And I was very, very sad. And I thought I really screwed things up and made a lot of mistakes. What happened a couple of years later, these lawyers told me, if you hadn't gone back for 3 months, it couldn't be 6 weeks, had to be 3 months. If you hadn't gone back, then it would have been like a 4-year separation. So the 2.5 years and the year, it would have amounted to 4-year separation. And it would have been like a de facto divorce. So while we were actually not divorced yet, we had been separated. And because of going back for those 3 months, everything that came to me to build this vision that I had falling in my head for 9 years was able to happen. And
You received it.
26 years later, I know this vision of Xenia was supposed to happen. So that's where I learned 100% implicit faith in when you're given instructions. Don't ask, don't, just do it, whatever that is. And that's where I learned radical trust.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Don't resist or control. Seems like the the answer that you got. And what I'm realizing is that when we say yes to this call within us and we pour ourselves onto the path of what we've been guided into, the process of emptying is accelerated.
Yes.
Like all of our beliefs of self and our judgments of life and how it should be starts to rise to the surface. And that's when it's like life after awakening. That's when the work really starts to happen. Yeah.
Mhm. So we can be used. So we can be used more.
Mm-hmm.
The more we've emptied out our own agenda, our own stories of who we think we are and all of that, we can be used more,
Thank you.
such as you with your work, Robin.
Thank you. I wanted to ask you, as you know, one of our dreams in the near future is to have intentional village. I would love for you to talk to us about how hundreds of people showed up and volunteered to take this rundown sheep farm and clean it up and build this beautiful space that you have today that we call Xenia. What did it take to bring those people together? What was the call? What was there for them? But maybe more importantly, what's the most important quality for community to work together harmoniously?
Hmm. Well, lots of questions there. The coming together of Xenia with all those volunteers, I think I had so much help and continue to have so much help, whether that be physical or you'll be amazed at what goes on in terms of what people come and offer and help. I think it's because I've never held out the position that I own Xenia as, like, I know I'm the steward of this land. I know um, you can't own anything. Like, I'm the holder of the space. And so there's two things with people. One is they know it's not about doing this for Angelyn because I'm holding the space about Xenia. So it's for Xenia that they're doing it. And secondly is I'm really big on reciprocity. Like I really want to make sure when somebody comes and works here, and we have all kinds of volunteers, and I can't believe how much they give and have given for years. And I want to make sure that they're witnessed and that if there's anything we can do to give back, whether it's they come and stay and we feed them or whatever it is, but a real witnessing and acknowledgement for that help. Because if it wasn't for those volunteers, this place wouldn't be here today. Even today, we have, like, you've met Dale. Dale is here every day. He's working on the tractor right now. And we do everything. Sari and I, we try and get little packages together for he and his wife, Sheena, like staying over at the studio, and we do a pack with wine and chocolates and whatever we can do to give back because they won't take money. No, 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 we just want to help. So we have a lot of people like that. And I think because they also get to express themselves in a creative way here, like building gates, doing this, they put their stamp on this place. And I think that means a lot to people. Mike, who was here, who built the Oracle, the little Oracle sanctuary. And there's so many things that people have done here and they've put their stamp on the place. So it's not like mine, like Saria believes she owns this place and Eleanor and we all do together. I own it like in terms of, legally, but everybody feels like it's theirs. Like you guys own this place. When you come, this is your place.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
Thank
the
you.
energy we want to hold here. Just that open, available, non-dogmatic kind of open space.
It's a beautiful example of humility, Angeline, and I am receiving this gift from you today of the importance of humility. And as a leader, the leader that you are and that you've been for these people, true leadership comes from the humility of noticing where and how much we can be stuck on our own ideas of how things should be, how other people should build a fence or a gate, for example,
Mhm.
instead of just really being humble enough to let people express their own creativity. Um, but I also, there's also a piece in there, and I've received this from the Gene Keys of letting go of your care of what other people think.
That only took, um, what am I now? 66 in a few weeks. It's only took me till I was about 50. It took a long time, Robin, to get over that.
Uh-huh.
That holds people back more than anything, caring about what people think. And they get held back. We get held back because of that. And the moment we realize we have license, we are fully licensed right now to fulfill our deepest longing, because we're in service when we do that. We are in service when we show up as we are supposed to be, and to do, like when I had a vision about Xenia, I didn't have any money. I didn't have, I saw 38 acres. I saw swings and animals, and it was a sacred place for the child within all to feel safe to be creative. That was the kind of words that came with the vision. And I'm thinking, I don't have any money. I don't know how I'm going to pull this off. I mean, and okay, bless my husband. I didn't expect somebody to have to die for this vision, but I don't see it that way. I see it as all the divine plan unfolding. The vision was there. It took a couple of years after he passed away. And then the 40 acres that I could see in my vision, I thought for the money I had, I'd have to go to Timbuktu or Fort Saint, somewhere very far away, to get the 38, 40 acres that I could see in my mind's eye. What a shock. It was right here on Bowen Island. The first time a large parcel of land had come up for sale in a very long time. Look, we mustn't get stopped by any limitation
Power
of
is
thinking,
relevant.
I don't have the money, I don't have the time, none of that is relevant, because it's not up to us.
Hmm.
The how isn't
Sorry,
up to us.
I lost your internet there for a second, so
Oh,
I'm very interrupted it. You're also a successful businesswoman. You've been the leading income earner for Univera for over 15 years. And this has partly allowed Xenia to continue with how you've been able to keep it alive, because it's, there's a continued expenses with a place like that,
yes,
obviously.
yes.
And as generous as you are, with that exchange and reciprocity of people coming to stay there, and the generous amount that you charge people to be there. Can you speak to that surrender to also working so hard, because it
Yeah.
takes hard work to create certain things?
When I first got the instruction about doing a network marketing business, I'm like, never in a million years. I'm not going to do that. But I did need money, and I'd already surrendered into the fire about money. So I wasn't afraid, but I was knowing that to keep a place like this up, we need much more money than what we were earning from the retreats. There's a lot to keep, uphold roofing and this and that and septic fields. And when this came to me, I'm like, no way. So I'm very pleased that my friend was tenacious with me and showed me, she said, Angelyn, this could be so great for your, for Xenia. People, they'll learn about that and they'll come. And well, for 15 years, I did step into that business, and it took off like a wildfire. And I became one of the $1 million earners, and won every award, top awards for servant leadership. And never in a million years did I think, A, I would do it, or B, would it be successful? But I tell you what, I started to really understand it's not what you think it is. It's not about like selling products. It's about the network, the community, the people that you are involved with, and how you're there to support them. And then the money thing just comes as well. It was from total surrender. I had to completely surrender. In fact, in the beginning, I was embarrassed. Like, oh God, they're going to think, oh, she's a network marketer. You know, I had a lot of kind of attitude about that. So I had to get beyond that, and I did. And that company closed. And I have recently, again, I said, okay, that's done. And I'm going to do my retreats, my 3 books I've written. I'm going to do online courses. I'm going to do this, that, and the other. Yeah, you're going to do that. But you know what you're going to do first? You're going to do this business to do with these stem cell activations. And yeah, you're going to do that as well. And it's going to be big. And you've got a very more global network that you're going to touch. And I'm like, took me 2 months of grieving because the other company closed after 15 years. And then I picked myself up and I said, oh, okay. But Robin, in many ways, it's all one. It's so integrated now in my life. Everything integrates together. It doesn't have to be, well, now I'm going to do that business and now I'm going to do that business. I mean, I did a Zoom this morning with that other business. I just love it all. And I love the balance of the work, because doing the kind of work of silent retreats that I love, that's my Dharma work. That's my Dharmic work. And if people can't afford a program, I still want them to be able to come. Whereas this work is my work for money. However, it's more than that. It's very fulfilling because I get to help a lot of people. And I know how to do it now. I know what, and I'm doing this with the new paradigm of transparency and of love. No BS. And to me, that's the new way of doing that business as well. And I love that.
Thank you. I feel it at the essence of that. It's the purpose and intention behind helping others that you fell in love with and you were passionate about because you enjoyed it. You were fulfilled by it.
Yes.
And it feels like the next stage of our evolution and in the collective is to come from our hearts. That true success is going to be our service from our heart, and not so much the brilliance or genius of the mind, but the wholeness of our being. Like when I feel you as an example, you offer your whole self.
Yes, people say, well, I don't want to sell. But don't sell. Serve. That's it. And there's a resonance that you follow. It's beautifully shown to us what to do next. Every next step is already there right in front of us if we just pay attention, get quiet, breathe, listen. People don't listen. And then act. Like, listen to what that deeper part of you is telling you. And most importantly, take action upon that. What action? You'll be shown. If you're shown to go left, go left. If you're shown to go right, go right. And it opens up into, never would I imagine having had a place like Xenia. I'm so grateful to be the steward here still 26 years later. And it's because I'm listening. And Robert, I don't know. I was talking to you a little earlier. I don't know how long I'll be the steward here. And I'm sure that if there's a sense of, okay, my job, my work here is complete, there could be some kicking and screaming. But I know no point arguing. Just surrender, stay breathing, stay with the breath, stay with the light, and trust, at 100% trust that it's all handled and that we're safe. We're not ever going to be put into something that we cannot handle.
Mm-hmm.
But we may have to stretch, and it may be uncomfortable. And you may even think you're going insane sometimes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What are the practices that you have to fill your cup?
Well, as you know, I'm keen with the horses, and even if it's going out to groom my horse or ride, that's one of my childhood passions. So being around the horse, I come back from a ride and there's not a single problem in the world to face because it brings me right into my childhood and my passion. But when I wake up in the morning, I usually, when I'm writing, I have one routine. And then when I'm not writing, I have another. But I always wake up and I have a little candle here. I brought it upstairs. I've got the candle on. I put my kettle on, have my cup of tea, put my candle on, and I always sit in the living room for a while, maybe 20 minutes. People say, "What, are you meditating?" Well, I call it, I'm a very contemplative. I contemplate. So I do meditation, but this ritual is a contemplation. It's just to just be and listen, just kind of listening.
Allow yourself to have a good think.
Yeah. And a lot of people need a good listening to.
Yeah.
When you were always told you need a good talking to. No, you need a good listening to. So
Mm.
that's my listening time. And other times, if I get upset, something's up, I'll go to Opa. We have a beautiful 1,000-year-old Douglas fir tree. And there's a groove in the tree where for 26 years I've been leaning against the tree. And I do like a defrag. I call it a defragmentation, like you do with the computer. And you just lean back and Opa defrags you. Takes about 20 minutes, half an hour maybe. I am very conscious of my breath and breathing, not anywhere near as much as you, but I more and more and more, I'm aware when I'm holding, like I'm not breathing. I have done some breathing work and rebirthing, but I'm very curious about your work. I'm going to get to know more of it going forward because I believe the breath is everything. Our breathing there's a lot of knowledge or something. There's a lot of answers to our health in our breathing and our spiritual journey.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the processes that we as a community here, everybody has, it's a process called instincts. And it's a technology that really is brilliant. And it goes below the level of the belief systems, works on the instinctive level. And if you haven't heard about it yet, Robin, I'm surprised, but we all work with that process. So when stuff's up, we work with Eleanor, and it's a phenomenal process for transformation. So that's what I use the most over the last 15 years. And I really believe that is why my capacity has kept opening and opening to be very successful in that other business and to be holding on to this space and keep expanding is my work with instincts. So next time you're here, I'll share more about that with you.
Beautiful. You could give us the nutshell of the process of
Okay.
tuning
So
into our instincts, if you can, please.
sure. We all have an instinctive kind of a step ladder, and it goes from hopeful to enthusiast. Now, the enthusiast lives in the present moment. They're recreating themselves, don't mind making mistakes. They're very, very conscious and present. And there's a lot of natural enthusiasts like Richard Branson or Oprah, some of the people like that. They have a huge capacity. Doesn't mean they're perfect and they've got it all together, but they have a huge instinctive level of ability. Down at the lower levels, there's starts off at hopeful, then it goes to careful. And these instinctive patterns, careful and focused and easygoing, and moves all the way up to associative, analytical, productive, Yeah, productive, optimistic enthusiast. And as you move up through this ladder, you have these governing patterns that pretty much run your life from beginning to end, unless you change them. When I first bought Xenia, I had a very low, this level down about 4 or 5 levels down, and I was overwhelmed all the time. I would overpromise, underdeliver, and I would need everybody's help about what to do next. So when instincts found me 15 years ago, I started to move up to analytical, which is the next level, which I started to see more clearly what was needed. And as a leader, like in my other business, I was able to begin the process of guiding people. And as I moved up to the next level, productive, then I was able to be a full-on leader, because now I was like a doing machine coming out of really clear analytical thinking. And then up from there, optimistic, instead of a doing machine, I'm more drawing things towards me, kind of the more of that yin power. And then the enthusiast is just full capacity, amazing. So that has been the work that I've been doing. And it's a process where you, once you learn how to move up, you want all the instincts. It's not about one's right or wrong, but you just don't want to get jammed on somewhere. Like if you're jammed on at responsible, you could be an over picky person. And, you know, if you're jammed on and careful, you're going to see everything through the filter of what could go wrong. What could go wrong, you know? So you want to be able to move up and through to the next level. So that's what this body of work is. And it was
Yep.
started by Gus Griffin in Australia about 30 years ago. And Eleanor Many is the teacher here. I know it very well after studying it for 15 years. And it's a tool that you can actually do yourself. Once you've learned how to do it, you can assess where you're stuck and shift out of it. And the thing about it is, once awareness becomes aware, it's done, and it's done permanently. You know what I'm saying? When you see something, like the story about you walk into the room and there's a snake, you think there's a snake, there's a snake, and you go, oh, it's a rope. So you walk in the next day, you're not going to go, oh, it's a rope. You're going to, no, no, no. I've already seen it's a snake. I mean, it's a rope. I've already seen it's a rope. So it's done.
Uh-huh.
That's what instincts does. It has the ability to help you cut through and shift your perspective. Once perspective is shifted, it's shifted. So
That's
it's an
beautiful.
evolutionary process. It sounds a bit analytical, but it isn't. It's something else, I tell you.
That feels like a powerful introspective look at some of those qualities of the mind where we get stuck as a little self, and to move beyond that stuckness into
Mhm,
our greater self. It brings me to this quote by Master Eckhart.
mhm,
It's something like, the eye through which I see God is the same eye that God sees me.
mhm,
So this eye that I'm looking at, and seeing things, is is inviting me to, it's the universe seeing
mhm,
me, it's through itself. Yeah. And so I love to have these reflections of tools like this and good friends and teachers to model and mirror where we're getting in our own way.
mhm.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So we can
Yeah.
bring more awareness, as you said.
And the level of consciousness that we perceive life through is what we see all around us. That is what we, kind of attract towards us or whatever. So as we shift and become more aware, more awake, and less judgmental, seeing things more through a different viewpoint, not even any viewpoint, everything just opens up more and more and more, and the capacity opens up more and more and more. And what is capacity about anyway? It's about being here fully conscious, very present, completely present, showing up as we are.
Thank you. Which is makes us a really good listener, and it makes us very available to what wants to come through us. Yeah.
and
Thank
trusting
you.
that, because we don't have to sweat it. Just trust what wants to come through, what wants to happen. Imagine being that surrendered.
Well, you've been really good at it, and you've offered us a really beautiful gift today of your story and some wisdom. As now, I look up to you as an elder, Angeline, and I'm really grateful for that space that you provided us for
Mm,
that inner child to be wild and free and explore, but also to connect in a very intimate way with other human beings and to be held in safety to move through some of the layers of what we've peeled there on the land. I really appreciate how you bring us the horses,
mhm.
um, usually on our heart day. All of a sudden, the horses are outside the temple, and um, it's really special to have those beings there. Horses are so amazing.
Mhm.
I appreciate your connection. Remind me of the names of those two horses.
Major, Mage. And he's the one that's a real people horse. He really is into people a lot. And then Kodo is my horse, and I call him Tutti Frutti. Tutti, Tutti Frutti, but Kodo is his name. And yeah, he's my horse. I love him so much, and he's lovely to ride. And Mage is a healing horse.
Hmm.
He is a healing horse. People gravitate to him a lot because he does work with them energetically.
Uh-huh. And like you said, I love how he gravitates to people because he comes really close, and
Yeah,
you can pet his head
yeah,
and slap his butt,
yeah,
and he loves to just be close to people.
yeah.
And it's a beautiful trait in a horse.
And then there's the donkey and the miniature horse who thinks he's a big stallion. The donkey too, aren't they precious?
Yeah.
Those little creatures.
Thank you for that space in nature and for becoming your true nature and setting that example for us.
Thank you for doing the work you're doing, Robin. It's immense work and really, really important. Such a young man to be totally in
Thank
your
you.
path, on your path. It's amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you show us the cover of your book, Radical Trust? Uh-huh.
Yeah, radical.
Manifesting a vision when it seems impossible.
And then,
Thank
of course, there's a
you.
picture of Xenia on the back, the little
Such a
hobby
blessed
farm.
place in the world. Thank you for your time today, love.
Thank you, Robin. See you soon.
You're a gift in this world. Peace and blessings, everyone. How can people find you as far as private retreats? And do you have a
Xenia,
website?
XeniaCenter.com. XENIA, Xenia Center, spell it English or American way.com. Or Angelyn Toth at Gmail. I mean, AngelynToth.com. AngelynToth.com.
Thank you.
I mean,